there's just always been this innate drive to build generational wealth. And for me, that's a bit different than, making a lot of money or being wealthy or being rich, whatever your definitions are of that. In order to build generational wealth, two things must happen. Two things, not one. One, there has to be the leader, the person who's going to go out and build the wealth, right? Is going to create those opportunities. But he said, but most important, there has to be somebody who can educate the next generations on how to continue to grow that.
I appreciate you taking the time.
No, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to have a, fun conversation, and whatever you want to talk about today, I'm an open book.
Perfect. So mostly it was kind of the syndication piece, kind of the investment syndication, the outside of the sales business, what you're doing on the investment side. And maybe we can just start with like a high level overview, if you'd be willing to share a little bit about what you do on the investment side and putting together.
And just so I best understand your audience, are your viewers mostly other real estate agents, other coaching clients, or is it, general public?
It's in that order, 1, 2, 3. So it's primarily other folks that are in the real estate space, whether they're agents or team leader, Rainmaker types or elsewhere. It's the 30, 35 folks that I coach. And then we send recordings and notes, just, hey, we had a cool conversation with this person. We've got about 1,600 people who are subscribers to the newsletter. And those are almost all KW agents or Rainmaker types outside of KW. Yeah.
Okay. Well, happy to chat. So, I've been a real estate professional now for, going in my 21st year. And, my dad was a real estate agent and a mortgage broker, cousins, uncles, mom, everybody was in the business. So I grew up around an entrepreneurial environment that was very transactional and relational in nature, right?
Okay.
I think the real estate business and the, if you want to call it syndication or investment business, it all starts with one thing, right? The goal is to get out there and meet as many people, establish a relationship with them, have a systematic way of staying in relationship with that person so that you can do repeat referral, investment business, whatever it might be, right? So the job of any really great Rainmaker is to make sure that they're maintaining long-term relationships and providing value to those relationships, that it's not a take relationship, it's a giver's gain relationship. What kind of value can I provide to the people who are in my world? And in return, how can we create win-win relationships? So I think that's important because it really is the bedrock of my sales business. And it's certainly the bedrock of my investment business. Okay. And so whether you're in real estate or any other type of transactional sales type of environment, I think that bottom line principle holds true. Yeah. And I think for those Rainmakers who have really got it, the transactional business becomes a lot easier when you're doing business with people who already know you, trust you, and think that you can help them.
Yeah.
Right. And so if every year you're trying to get 100, 200, 300, 700 transactions, well, doing that from a database of folks who are already familiar with you, it's a least resistant path.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason I want to say that is I think that probably, almost every single one of your listeners is going to relate to the fact that, when do I get off the transactional hamster wheel, right? Even the folks with huge businesses, every conversation I've ever had in a high level room is, using Keller Williams language. It's like, how do I get seventh level? How do I get myself untangled from the transaction? How do I become the visionary business owner helping other people transact? And so I think there's like this embedded desire in every salesperson to like go do as many transactions as they can so they can taper off and not do as many transactions.
Doing transactions.
I'm just saying that because you're going to see as I kind of unravel this, it's so intertwined around that concept. My particular career path, I started off as a brokerage owner, independent brokerage owner, and the day I opened my doors, I'd already hired one agent and kind of grew that to 12 agents, and then, found my way over to Keller Williams. And one of the reasons I came to Keller Williams was the opportunity. So many opportunities that were around other than just transacting, whether it be mass coaching or gold coaching or being an operating principal, which obviously leads to other silos of business like, escrow, title, mortgage, things of that nature. So, for the last 12 years, I've been consistently growing and building my sales team, but also looking for other places where I can invest my money or invest my know-how and ability to operate in a way that would make me money and help make other people money.
Mm-hmm.
I've also had this major, that's what I'm looking for. There's just always been this innate drive to build generational wealth.
Okay.
And for me, that's a bit different than, making a lot of money or being wealthy or being rich, whatever your definitions are of that. For me, I know that my folks did their best to provide financial literacy, to provide opportunity and show me different doorways. But when I really started getting into business, what I realized was that me and most of the people around me, especially a lot of our clients that we're serving, are pretty financially illiterate. And I don't say that in a judgmental way. It's just little things like being able to, understand assets and liabilities, understanding a balance sheet, understanding a profit and loss, understanding taxation, understanding compounding interest.
Mm-hmm.
All the fundamentals, right? Very basic fundamentals of just financial literacy. And so that's what really began my journey here. Really starting by getting financially literate, using a lot of what Gary Keller has taught me, from visiting my money often, literally just sitting and staring at the balance sheet, staring at the profit and loss, creating a budget, and really using that as a platform for everything that I do.
Yeah.
So I know I'm starting way back, and your listeners may want to know some of the details of syndication. I promise I'll get there, but I think like any good business, you can't. It's like we learned in Bold, right? It's be, do, have, and it's who are you being? Are you being somebody who deeply is invested in learning financial literacy and learning, how to leverage money and learning, right, how to grow wealth, and then you got to go out and do it, and then you get to have what you want to have there. So for me, it starts with like, who are the people around me? Who's my database? What kind of relationships are we in? What am I doing to constantly increase my personal knowledge around, in this case, the topic of conversation, investments.
Investment. Right? Yeah.
And then what can I do? What actions can I take that build progress towards that goal?
Yeah.
And going back to the generational wealth thing, as a father, I have 2 children. I've really made it a mission to make sure that part of me preparing them to have an extraordinary life in their adult life means that I help them understand this aspect, living in the United States, like living in a capitalist society, living in a country where money does matter. Money, buys time, it buys influence, it buys opportunity. It doesn't just buy stuff, right? It buys access, right? Things of this nature. So I've been making sure that I'm being the best role model and creating the biggest vacuum I can, so that my children have that opportunity to learn. My daughter's 14. I've got her reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, How to Turn $100 into $1 million. She took a crack at, Think and Grow Rich.
I love it.
Yeah. And so, things of that nature where, she'll do with that information at 14 years old, what she's going to do with that information, but really trying to make sure that's paramount. And the reason I'm starting with all of this is I was able to have a really great conversation, a deep conversation with Gary Keller about building generational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something that landed so deeply, right, in what I'm doing right now, is that in order to build generational wealth, 2 things must happen. 2 things, not one. One, there has to be the leader, the person who's going to go out and build the wealth, right? Is going to create those opportunities. But he said, but most important, there has to be somebody who can educate the next generations on how to maintain, continue to grow that.
Yeah.
I mean, how many scenarios, and I'm sure every single listener can point to a friend or somebody they know who's really rich, and then the kids, by the next generation, that money's blown, the kids are in rehab, right? They're, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that just by it, I don't know what the eventual outcome will be, certainly for my family, but I know that my mission, my personal mission around this is one is to go out and create a family office. Create a structure that builds wealth that lasts beyond just one generation. If I can build wealth that lasts, through at least my grandchildren's generation, I would hope beyond that. But if I could help create a world where my wife and I and my children and their children, have the opportunity to continue, building that generational wealth, then I will feel like I have succeeded in my mission.
Yeah. So a leader, I'm going to go back to that. That's because I think that's really, really both interesting and important, right? A leader that creates the wealth and the education that lasts.
Yeah, and somebody who, and making sure that the next generation is receptive and open to learning, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm finding ways that I can to help prime my children's brain for, hey, listen, there's, just like you learn in Rich Dad Poor Dad, there's 4 quadrants of making money. You can go and work for it with your time. You can be self-employed, and essentially it's like your leverage time. Most people own a job, not own a business when they're self-employed. And, then there's business ownership and there's investments. And so my intention is to help my children understand they can choose any 4 quadrants, and there's not a wrong one. There's not. There's not a wrong one. I mean, the CEO of Citibank on a W-2 salary, I'm sure, is very, very, successful and wealthy, right? But for me, my personal values is, what can my family do to always live on the right-hand side of that cash flow quadrant as business owners and investors? Because to me, that smells the most like independence, freedom of choice, freedom of time, freedom of choosing who and how you get to go about your day and your life experience, right? So so that's what I'm looking to do. And I wanted to start with all that because we'll get into some of the nitty gritty of what I'm doing to syndicate real estate, so to speak. I use a syndication model. I'm really not syndicating at this time, but I'm using a syndication model, which I will talk about. So yeah, I hope that gives you a little bit of insight. I've been a business owner since I was 23 years old. Coming out of college, I did have a manager's job in retail as I was launching a marketing and .com company. So by 23 years old, I had a couple of business partners and I was off and running in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And it's really been the biggest, one of the biggest loves of my life, of course, besides my children and my family and my wife. But as far as my professional endeavors, entrepreneurship's been a big passion of mine.
Yeah.
And so, after I sold my shares of my company back to my business partners in that marketing and .com company, I launched my real estate brokerage and then a couple of Keller Williams market centers and some escrow companies and a mortgage bank. And so I've had my hand in a lot of those things and all in an effort to find which path was going to best propel me. It's almost like the Berlin Wall or the Great Wall of China, or something like getting from that left-hand side of the quadrant to sustainably living in the right-hand side of the quadrant. I mean, it takes more than a hop, skip, and a jump. It's, that's been my experience anyway. And so I had been playing around with all these other opportunities and kept finding myself in a job, right?
Okay.
Even as an operating principal, which has been a great opportunity with Keller Williams. It's a fantastic opportunity. And yet for me, my vision was that it would be more on the right-hand side of the quadrant than the actual, job of operating, which is very necessary. It's very necessary to have a skilled operator in real estate brokerage. And so as I've been navigating through, I believe I've landed on what I'm most excited about, which is to own and operate, which is still a job, but it's to own and operate a family office that makes strategic long-term cash flowing investments.
Okay.
So that's how we've arrived today. So that being said, what am I doing now?
Yeah. How are you doing that?
Yeah, how am I doing? Okay. So the first thing I did is I set a goal. I made an intention. I said, okay, I want to own a family office. What is a family office? If you go on Wikipedia and all that, a family office is typically defined by a single member or close tied member, like with family members owning a business that has $50 million or more of assets that that serves the purpose of benefiting the family, right? Generations or the sisters and brothers and the cousins or whatever you want to call that. My loose definition there. So the first thing I needed, okay, what's a family office? I'm going to go ahead and start one. So I did that by calling a really fantastic attorney to help me set that structure up. And we have an LLC and born Kane Capital LLC. And that was kind of step number one. And then step number two is trying to define what we're going to invest in, right? I had already owned, residential real estate rentals and other investments in stock markets and bonds and things like that. But what was going to be the strategic path of Kane Capital? And, there's lots of ways to make investments, as you know. I am a firm believer in invest in what you know.
Okay.
Invest in what you know. So, okay. Step number one, form the structure. Step number two, define what our investment path was going to be. Rule number one, invest in what you know.
Yeah.
I know real estate. 21 years in personally, a 55-year family history in real estate. So I feel like that's a space that I know. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I shouldn't invest in real estates that are not yet familiar to me. It just meant that I understand real estate transactions. I understand leverage. I understand rents. I understand depreciation. I understand lease renewals, right? Things that are just very common in that real estate space. So my very first investment I made was in a multifamily apartment complex, 18 units. The very first Kane Capital investment I made was in an 18-unit multifamily. Why? I've been in residential real estate for 21 years. I completely understand that space. And so that was the first move. And along the way, I really started studying, researching, exploring other real estate assets like triple net retail, light industrial warehouse, things like that. And so my second investment was in a triple net retail deal.
Okay.
The reason I went that direction is the triple nets. So triple net being net, meaning the tenants are responsible for paying the taxes, the insurance, and the majority of all the maintenance items. What I found in most triple net retail deals is there are some aspects of property ownership that are still going to fall back on the owner. Usually the roof and the parking lot oftentimes are carve outs, especially if you're working with national tenants, right? Who have these leases all over the country. But for the most part, 90% of your expenses are going to fall on the tenant. So, for example, the difference between my apartment complex and my retail complex, right? My apartment complex, I've already replaced 2 air conditionings and 2 water heaters at my cost.
At your cost.
When it became 120 degrees in Phoenix. And those things started to fail for whatever reason. When on my triple net deal, right, if the water heater goes out or the AC needs repair maintenance, then it's up to the tenant to cover those costs. And so it's just for me, I found that the triple net retail for me in today's market, and things shift, but in today's market, it provides a bit more stability and predictability on cash flow. Certainly there's risks, right? Retail centers can go out of business. We're looking at a deal right now where one of the tenants just moved out in the middle of the night and they still have 2.5 years left on their lease.
Okay.
So that happens. But if you've got good tenants who are staying and paying, then you can start to have a bit more predictability in your monthly and quarterly and annual cash flow.
Yeah. And again,
step one was to form the LLC. Step two is to pick the direction. right? For me, it was invest in what you know. And then 3 was just to take action, was to go out and find a deal that's worth investing in.
Yeah.
Did you
For
have a
the
question?
purpose of funding the family office. I mean, still with this, all while maintaining the long-term vision of funding the family office.
Yeah. And so the first thing I did was to find a deal worth investing in, and that was the apartment building.
Okay.
So actually, let me take a step back. In order for me to find the right investments,
Yeah.
I needed to find either I needed to lead generate for those,
Yes.
or I needed to solve the lead generation problem if I wasn't going to do it.
Okay.
So the path that I took before I made any other investments after I started Kane Capital was to
Yeah.
hire an asset manager.
Okay.
And
Okay.
in the commercial real estate world, an asset manager they're not only like a property manager, right? They have typically 3 jobs. Their job is to bird dog opportunities.
Yep.
Okay, they have create opportunities. Their second job, which is very important, is to be able to underwrite that opportunity to properly perform that property.
Yeah.
And then third is once the acquisition is occurred to help, manage the asset, right? And I'm not saying property manage. What I'm saying is, do the tax filings, hire the property manager if it's
Yeah.
you're going to have an on-site property manager, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Now I could have done all those things myself,
Sure.
and yet that's not a business.
Yeah.
That's just me taking on 3, 4, 5 more jobs. I also knew what I didn't know, and I really, as much as I could build out an easy cap rate pro forma or a cash flow pro forma on a 4-plex or an 8-plex or something like that, to really build out a pro forma on a 10 to 15-year hold on a triple net retail deal with commercial financing and all that kind of stuff and CAMs and CapEx type stuff. It takes a pro underwriter, a pro analyst with pro software.
Yeah. Yeah.
Formed the LLC, chose my path of investing in what I know, made a hire of an asset manager, and that asset manager was the one who brought me the first opportunity in those apartments.
Okay.
So he found those, he underwrote those, and once we determined this was something that we wanted to do, I put out a letter of intent and started my negotiations with property owner, and concurrently, I reached out to my network.
Okay.
And that's why that database is important, because I realized I had sold nearly 2,000 homes in my career. I've got a 10,000 plus database. And somewhere in that 10,000 people, there must be, right? There must be somebody who would trust and appreciate the opportunity to co-invest with me in real estate, knowing my skill set, knowing that this is what I do full time, right? And so you made a few phone calls, and there was one particular individual in my database who said, yes, I'd be very interested in co-investing. And so we spelled out what that would look like, and I will, go through that with you here in a second. So I was able to line up my co-investor. At the same time, I was able to lock up an executed letter of intent. So once I knew I had my investor and I had that property, locked up, then we started spending money on the attorneys to put together a formalized purchase and sale agreement, get ourselves into escrow, and to start to work with the commercial banks out there to find the best loan for that particular property.
Got it.
Now, I will say that particular property, one reason why we liked the deal so much was the seller had advertised that he had an assumable note. So he had a Fannie Mae assumable note at around 3.5% fixed for another 7.5 years. And so that seemed really attractive to us. We bought the property at around a 6.5 cap. So if you're buying a 6.5 cap and you're only leveraging 50% of the purchase with 3.5% money, you're going to get some good cash flow.
There's decent cash flow there. Yeah.
So we decided to obviously, work through the existing lender and that particular deal get approved. I will tell you that if you don't already own multifamily, it's the commercial banks, especially Fannie Mae, they have a condition of just not, you gotta own multifamily, be an experienced operator for them to give you a loan. So the good news is my co-investor and I, we have multiple units, so we did qualify there. But I mean, there are some hurdles to doing what we're doing here. And so, if you have a portfolio of 20 single family homes and then you want to go get a commercial loan on some apartment buildings, not all lenders may want to lend to you, but there will be someone out there. You just have to, pound the phones and find the right one.
And find the right ones. Yeah. Interesting.
So here's what I mean. So when I got into conversation with my co-investor on what the structure would look like, I decided to use what I'm just going to call a syndication model, meaning I structured the financial arrangements similar to what you see a lot of syndicators do, which is, I get paid to go out and find the property, investigate the property, take care of all the logistics to set up the entities to own the property, things like that. And in this particular case, we co-invested into one special purpose entity. So we own this apartment building in a new LLC that we formed, and in that when we close on the property, I take an acquisition fee, one-time acquisition fee, and then I have a built-in cost to be the ongoing asset manager for that LLC that owns the real estate. And as asset manager, what we do is we interact weekly with the current property manager who is dealing with the deposits and the move-ins and the move-outs and the new leases and the maintenance and the repairs and all of that. We're creating our annual budgets. We'll be filing the taxes. We are continuously monitoring. We're paying the mortgage. We're interacting with the mortgage servicer. All the things that it takes to basically run that business of owning that property. And so we get paid an annual asset management fee.
Okay.
And then we also have what's called a disposition fee. So when it comes time to sell the property, we'll get paid a one-time disposition fee to manage the logistics around selling that property.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I kind of say with the syndication model is that in that particular investment, we came in together with cash to own that special purpose entity that owns the real estate. My business model has what's called a built-in waterfall or a built-in promote.
Okay.
And what those words really mean is, as the manager, I'm incentivized to manage the property so well, right? Manage that asset so well that it hits certain return thresholds. And if it hits certain return thresholds, then I have increased compensation.
Got it.
So in that particular deal, I said to the investor, I go, hey, I'd like to offer you a 7 pref, which means the first 7% of annualized income, right? Meaning like for make the math easy, if he put in $1 million, right? In the first $70,000 a year that is made in that property is pledged his direction.
To his direction. Got it.
After all expenses and fees and debt service and all of that. Beyond a 7% return. So let's say in year 3, we make $93,000, right? So we have $23,000 extra dollars above that 7%. Well, then we start to split that up differently.
Got it.
And everybody has a different model. In this particular case, I have an 80-20 waterfall and then a 60-40 waterfall, meaning let's just say for anything from 7 to 9% gets split 80-20. And anything above 9% could be split 60-40.
60-40. Yeah.
The investor still gets the first 7%. And then let's say we hit a 9% return. Then that extra 2% would be split 80-20.
80-20. Yeah.
And then let's say we hit an 11% return. So the 7 to 9% money gets split 80-20, but then the 9 to 11% return gets split 60-40.
Got it.
And and that's what I consider like the syndication model. Right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not syndicated. I haven't gone out to the general public and solicited
Sure.
Solicited stuff. In fact, The reason why I went with this particular co-investor was I didn't really solicit him. He actually solicited me. He said, "Hey, if there's ever an opportunity to invest in something that you're doing, please give me a ring."
Let me
Right.
know. Yeah.
And so he was, the very first person that I called. So that's what I mean by a syndication model. And in that model, for me, what I'm doing is, I don't have unlimited money. But if you think about it, like I don't have unlimited buyer clients, but the entire real estate industry has unlimited buyer clients, right? That I may only have 30 buyers at any one time, but you know, the other 26,000 real estate agents in San Diego will have the other 20 or 30,000 agents. So,
Yeah.
I just kind of approached investing the same way, which is I don't have unlimited money, but my network has enough money to accomplish the goals. And if I can set up a win-win structure, like I just described,
Yep.
and do my part in picking the right properties, managing the business of those properties in an effective way that gets great returns,
Yeah.
then I continue to buy as many properties as my network is willing to invest in.
As the network can absorb. Yeah, exactly.
That it can absorb. And so in these cases, I'm putting anywhere between 5 to 25% of the needed capital into the purchase. And I'm bringing in 75 to 95% of the needed capital through the investing, the co-investor, and or through debt, right? Through down.
Yeah.
And so, with where I am at personally, financially, I feel like I can invest in a lot of deals if I'm only coming in with 5 or 10% of the needed capital.
Sure.
So I think, probably pick up 2 or 3 properties a year and kind of build that portfolio out.
Yep.
My goal is to get to $200 million of assets under management and co-invest as fast as humanly possible.
Got it.
I set a goal of 10 years as the latest by which that would happen.
Okay.
Well, and I'm looking to get into that situation way faster, right? Like to be at that level, ideally in 6 to 7 years, which means, going to have to invest in quite a bit of property, in order to make that
20, 30, 40 million a year. Yeah. You got to get that.
Yeah. So this year we're on track to have acquired about 18 million in real estate. So we're basically on track for the 10-year goal, right?
Yeah.
So, but and we're constantly looking for other opportunities to expand. One thing I know is as the properties that I own today that are worth 18 million, 10 years from now, by our pro forma, they would be worth, even if I didn't buy anything else, that 18 million would be worth 30 million, right? So as time goes by and we exchange into bigger properties and the value of the properties go up, that's another way that we're going to get to our number in that time frame. So, I don't know what different people's definitions of financial and generational wealth is, but I figure if I'm running a family office with $200 million of assets under management as a baseline for what we're doing, between fees and distributions of our, particular ownership interest, that's generating well over $2 million a year of net cash flow from the ownership of real estate. And that funds a lot of things. Ultimately, my asset manager who has sights on, participating at an ownership level has the intention of building the assets under management. His goal is $1 billion. So the idea here is like, what can we do to have somewhere between 200 million and $1 billion of assets under management? And for me, if we fall anywhere in between, I know that I've accomplished what I've set out to accomplish in setting up a family office structure that creates generational wealth.
Yeah.
So ideally, I also want my children to do anything and everything that they want to explore in their life. If they don't want to grow up to be, family office asset managers or anything like that, then so be it. However, I want to make sure they know that opportunity exists. And when they finish college and they finish kind of exploring the things they explore in their in their 20s, as they start to look beyond and see what their financial stability, what their personal life goals are, and how they want to spend their time. I only hope to have an open door opportunity to teach them, how to manage the assets that the family office has created as a career and opportunity path, so that they can have the most amount of freedom of time to spend however they choose to do it. If they want to be a musician, or they just really want to spend as much time with their kid, if they want to, run a nonprofit that may not sustain them financially in the way that they want to live. Or they want to make sure that their children are getting the very best education for whatever they want to do, right? There's the money is good for the good that money can do. Maybe there's just going to be, my kids want to have a massive philanthropic part of their lives. So again, whatever they can imagine, I just want to make sure we have set up the financial opportunity for that. And it's not entitlement. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying they can do whatever they want to do and they just have unlimited funds to go travel the world and be a vagabond, right? Like, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is, I think that most of us out there fall into what we're doing by default.
Yeah.
There are a handful of professionals who at 9 years old knew they wanted to be a doctor, right? Or knew they wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when I talk to those doctors and lawyers at 45, they go, I don't know why I ever wanted to do this. I'm miserable.
Why did I want to do that?
So, if I can help create an environment where my family and my generations of family can really curate their life by design.
Yeah.
I will have succeeded in my mission.
That's the success.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be just my family. I know I keep saying that, but for me, anybody who is in my world, right, is in my world, I'm continuously looking at ways to help them curate that same lifestyle.
Yeah.
And whether they have a job with me at one of my companies, or they're co-investing with me, or they're people in my social network. I mean, that's things that we do. I mean, might sound kind of nerdy, but I've got multiple friends where, we drop the kids off at soccer practice on Tuesday, then we'll go to the restaurant for Taco Tuesday and, and grab some tacos and literally sit there with an iPad and go and we'll talk about their budget and their balance sheet. And I'm not a financial planner. I don't pretend to be, but it's just friendly conversation of like, hey, I know you want to trade up from the house you're in right now, or I know you're talking about retiring at 55. Like, what's your path? We have those conversations, and so I just try to surround myself with opportunity to talk about financial literacy and generational wealth.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me absolutely, Brian, of page 95 in Shift, right? Those 6 connection questions that Gary talks about, and he makes the point that when you're able to know to answer those 6 connection questions, who the people in your database are, who they are, what they want, why they want to do it, when they want to do it, and how they would make it happen. It's not that the answers themselves matter. It's that it's a reflection of the degree to which you are connected to those folks and you've built the relationship that you've described. Right. That's
You're a great coach. You just brought it full circle to how I started this conversation, which is like your database matters, right?
Your database matters.
It's not the 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the 2,000 past clients. It's the relationships. Because I said the job is to go out there and meet as many people as you can.
Yeah.
Have a systematic way of staying or being in relationship with that person, such that whatever the goal is, whatever the mission is for them, for your company, can be accomplished. And I think you said it more eloquently by quoting page 95.
Gary did. Exactly. I just channeled my inner Gary quote. So that's all I got.
There you go.
Yeah. And it's
insights to what we're doing. And there's lots of different models, by the way.
Yeah.
We're looking at another deal right now where, we're not going to set it up kind of like a pref. There's other ways of setting up these models. So I would just encourage anybody who's interested to go out and study, network, take coffee meetings with folks who are doing stuff like this. One way that we're looking at structuring a deal is to just pay on the cash, right? So you can set it up where like, hey, the first 6% of cash annually
Yeah.
Right? Like, we'll make sure that goes to you, but then the cash beyond that will have a certain type of split.
Yep.
When you do a pref, a lot of times what happens is, let's say you offer 7 pref, but you've only paid out 5% of cash flow that year. So let's say the person invested $1 million, they have a 7 pref, which means they're owed $70,000 of available cash. Like the property can also just like underperform. A pref is not a guarantee.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just saying, the first 7% of annualized profit, right, IRR, would be earmarked your way.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say we're only paying 5%. There's only 50,000 going out. Well, if you set it up on a pref, you still have 2%. There's still $20,000 of money that gets stacked into the capital account and owed to that co-investor when the property sells, if that property has, equity to give. So, you hold property for 10 years. Next thing you know, you may end up owing another $200,000.
Yeah.
At the time of sale, before your regular split.
Yeah.
And at times that can de-incentivize the asset manager and the property manager to go out there and really do a bang up job while you own the asset, right?
Yeah.
While you own the asset. So there, you can set up as a prep, you can set it up on a cash basis where, hey, the first 6% goes to you, cash on cash, and then we split up the rest, and then we reset the next year. There's no carryover.
There's no carryover.
So learning how to structure your co-invest deals is really, really important. And also learning the legalities of everything. So for example, like, if you're going to go and, first of all, if you're going to go and be a sponsor and take a promote, there's very strict rules about that. You can't take a promote from a tenant and common partner, for example, because you can't be the manager. They have to be undivided interest and separate, all this kind of stuff. So I don't want to give any legal advice, but what I do want to say is get a very, very, very good attorney.
Yeah.
Who understands real estate taxation law and securities law.
Yeah.
Because I'm gathering that the majority of our listeners today understand real estate.
Yeah.
But their area of expertise is not real estate tax law, and it's certainly not securities law.
Yeah.
For example, if you are taking on an investor, even if they're accredited and they're known to you and all these things, like, you may still be under the stipulations of secure, Reg D stuff and securities where you have to offer subscription agreements and take care of these things. So this is not, I say taking this route is certainly doable for smart people who know real estate, who've got a great network, but you would find yourself being very unsmart if people are doing this without without legal counsel.
Without good counsel. Yeah.
Without good legal counsel. And so, I spent a lot of money. I mean, I don't know. At least $50,000 in legal documents.
Yeah.
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 To make sure that we're set up in a way that is blessed by the legal counsel.
Yeah.
We describe what we want to do, and then they create the documents and the structure to support legally to protect not just me, but of course, to make sure that our co-investors have protection and doing things the right way as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, the one thing I can say, just, if you're somebody who has a history or a track record of success and having people invest with you, and you're transparent, meaning that you communicate regularly, you're transparent about what's happening in the business, you take regular monthly or quarterly meetings with your investors, and if you're not paying a distribution that quarter, you tell them why. If you are making distributions, you tell them why, right? But if you've got a history of people investing with you, and you're able to actually make returns for that investor in a way that is compliant and legal and above board and ethical and communicative and transparent, you're probably a very good candidate for doing something similar to what I'm doing, because that's really what it is. When I owned a market center, 2 market centers, I had investors. And so my job, of course, was to, follow the franchise agreement to make sure I'm running a Keller Williams worthy, real estate brokerage. of course, to make sure that our people were succeeding, all of our agents and associates and staff members were having, having those businesses worth owning and lives worth living and careers worth having and all of that. That was paramount. And for our investors, it meant that. And if you're an investor, you expect a return. So it meant that generate returns.
Yeah.
And if you've been an OP or you've owned a small business and you've had an investor, then doing what I'm doing is really no different.
Yeah.
It's just my product and my service, instead of recruiting independent contractor agents and supporting them in their success, now I'm just recruiting assets and supporting the success of those assets to generate returns.
Yeah.
But the rest of the model is pretty similar. Owning any other type of small business.
Yeah. Well, and you just said it, right? You've made investing a business, as in there's a model, there's a plan, you find it, leads, listings, leverage, right? Gary can't grow 30 seconds without drawing a triangle. So we're going to go back to the triangle, right? What are the leads we need? Well, we need some assets to look at. We want to focus on high producing assets. And then we have leverage, which I think is really the takeaway for me, is the degree to which we might know real estate, but we might not know, say, asset management. And we certainly don't know real estate law and securities law at the level required, right? So we do need leverage. This is you have a highly leveraged activity.
Yeah. And I solved the leads problem by hiring you can call them an ISA, but I think in our world of real estate, I think a lot of agents look at an ISA as just a telemarketer, right? Or maybe a customer service specialist. For me, the lead generator, the ISA, had to be a skilled asset manager, a skilled underwriter, and a skilled real estate professional. So I found some emerging talent. They were in their 8th year in the business. And the way I was able to recruit him was he was already working with 2 really, really great and well-known and reputable investment offices. But that world has kind of traditionally given asset managers a salary. Mm-hmm. And then they typically give them really good bonuses, end of the year bonuses, or upon acquisition bonuses, things like that. But what's rarely offered in most institutional firms is the opportunity for equity in the assets,
ownership,
or in profits, interests, in the assets that they're working so hard to help other people get rich in. So again, if you're with Keller Williams, you've heard Gary say it all the time, how do you create a world that's big enough for talented people to be in it? And so I set a benchmark.
Yeah.
And I said, when we hit X amount of stabilized cash flow, then you will have an opportunity to start. We will set up a structure that involves, a profits interest or equity interest in the various assets that we are exploring. What I'm not open to is I'm not going to have anybody else own any shares of Kane Capital. This is a single member LLC, right? I'm not giving away a company stock, but what I'm willing to do is share in the equity and treat them just like another co-investor, right? So if they want to co-invest into deals with us, then he'll have an opportunity to do that. And he's told me on several occasions that he took the leap of faith to go with a startup because of that. And that shouldn't be too surprising. There's lots of people in the world who jump in .com startups and other startups because they're offered, stock and things like that. And so he made the transition over, and I've been very, very happy with his performance to date. And because of the track record, it's not because I like him or this and that. It's because we're gonna be we're on target to hit our goal. And those are from assets that he found and he underwrote and he helped us acquire. And for that, I'd say he's talent.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The Trammell Crow model, right? That Trammell Crow master builder model, that idea of that talented asset manager that's got some ownership, some participation in it. And the more then then the first form of leverage is the network and the capital that the network has. And then the more talented asset managers you have,
Right.
the more you can do even more of that. So,
yeah.
I've taken a ton of your time. I am grateful for what you've shared. I'd love to have a whole second conversation about some of the detailed tax strategy stuff, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah.
If folks want more, Brian, how should we go find you? I know Kane Capital, KaneRealEstate.com on the web. Where else should we?
So far, if you're interested in a referral relationship in the real estate space, KaneRealEstate.com is our website. If you're interested in learning more about Kane Capital, we're at Kane Capital, LLC.com.
Got it. Perfect.
So I do appreciate you having me on, and I hope everyone can use this information to think about, how can they find their path to the right-hand side of the cash flow quadrant, however that's going to look, and find a way to get off that transactional hamster wheel to some degree. Although what I'm saying is I'm still transacting real estate.
I was going to say you're still crushing real estate. So I don't want folks to leave this conversation thinking you're not absolutely killing it on the real estate, on the transactional side. You still are. You've just leveraged that into a whole new thing.
Yeah. The real estate team, I think we're on track for maybe about $150, $160 million in real estate sales. And then, I'm using a lot of the income I earn from that side of the business to, invest in these long buy and holds that cash flow over time. That, yes, we had to transact. So 3 commercial transactions this year, and the cycle's just longer. I won't transact on those properties again for another 5 to 15 years.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate the time.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Be safe. Be well. We'll talk soon.